Hi, everyone. My name is Joseph King, and I'm a web application engineer at Autodesk. I've been here for a little over 2 years now and spend most of my time working on React apps and component libraries. Before my time at Autodesk, I worked at companies like Credit Karma and Dispatcher, also developing web and React Native apps. More recently, I've been focused on our organization's build and deploy pipeline, specifically on how we can improve our test automation with better tools and strategies so that we can deploy our code more often and worry less about bugs. I'm excited to talk about that work today alongside my colleague Hector, who is co-presenting with me.
Thank you very much, Joe, and hello, everyone. My name is Hector Coronado, and I've also been working at Autodesk for right around 2 years now. I'm pretty new to this field, having spent a long time working in the service industry. And so my work with the team that Joe and I work together in has been really exciting. Along with the rest of our teammates, I've had a chance to work on improving and optimizing our application's performance, scaled our CSS in a way that's made it possible to bring our app to new Autodesk properties, and more recently, I've been focusing on improving our test coverage and automation, which is what we'd like to talk to you about today.
So today we'd like to give you a quick walkthrough of the React application we work on. We'll touch on the functionality and where we started from in terms of testing and deployment. We'll share what we set out to accomplish with test automation in our CI/CD pipeline. We'll talk about which testing tools we picked out to do the job and why. And finally, we'll go over where we're at in the process and areas we're aiming to improve on even more in the future. As we mentioned in our introductions, we work on a React application called UHM, which stands for Universal Help Module. UHM can be found in many places across Autodesk web properties, for example, here on the homepage of Autodesk.com. Our goal with UHM is to guide users to the help and answers they need as quickly and as accurately as possible. That may be finding them the right community article from our knowledge network, connecting them to a chat agent, leveraging our AI chatbot Ava, or any other number of solutions.
With UHM, we can figure out what people are looking for in several different ways. We almost always start by giving people a series of options that progressively zero in on a specific topic. As you might have seen on the previous video, people can also submit questions and queries via forms that then go through natural language processing. And we always use the context of where someone is interacting with UHM from as a way to get a good base level understanding of what someone might be looking for right from the get-go. Usually, through a combination of these strategies, we can gather enough context and we can connect the user directly with the help that they are looking for.
In addition to offering many types of support, there are also a few different ways that UHM is rendered across Autodesk products. As a floating question mark in the corner of our website, like we showed you earlier, as a full page experience on our Knowledge Network's contact support page, and most recently in the desktop app of Fusion 360, one of our most popular products for making 3D designs and models. The dotted lines here outline a couple of UHM's different user interfaces, with the same business logic running everything underneath. As a team, we love bringing UHM to new destinations and more customers across Autodesk, but as our application grows in usage and features, our need to discover and stick to best programming practices grows too. One of those best practices that Hector and I set out to develop was a fast, thorough, and reliable test automation platform for our CI/CD pipeline.
The reasoning behind this initiative, the primary objective, is to get completed features into production as soon as possible. This, in turn, is motivated by the fact that, by definition, completed features ought to have a positive business impact and add value to our users. As engineers, we were also really psyched to work on this project because it would obviously mean that we'd get to see our work go live mere hours after we finish it, as opposed to the days that it can sometimes take for something to make it all the way to production at present. In order to get there, we knew we needed to have a robust automated testing strategy to confidently deploy our code as soon as a feature is complete. And very naturally, this led us to the following questions. The first one was, what needs to be tested? The short answer is everything, but of course we wanted to have a good, methodical approach to full coverage. The second question is, what tools are available to us to do that testing, and how do we weigh their pros and cons? And finally, and critically, when do we need to run our different types of tests during our build and deploy process in order to reach the overall goal we'd set for ourselves?
To kick off our research, we took stock of our current testing infrastructure, which looked a lot like this. Lackluster unit tests written in Jest with many poorly written tests, ending up simply being skipped so we could just merge our code and move on. End-to-end tests written in Java with Selenium. While these tests were thorough, they weren't part of our build pipeline and only found bugs after they had been deployed. With the rapid growth of our features, these Selenium regression suites began to take upwards of 30 minutes for each of our UIs. On top of this, these end-to-end tests didn't include any visual regression, leaving lots of room for bugs that we were not explicitly testing for. Finally, because of the lack of test automation early on in our build process, our QA engineers have to do extensive manual testing after a deployment, making sure there are no bugs in production. This can be extremely time-consuming and tedious and leaves more room for human error. The need for all this manual testing was a huge roadblock for us in our journey to deploy more frequently.
So after getting the lay of the land and understanding where we were starting from, we got to work on researching what test automation tools were available to us that would check off all the requirements. We felt confident that Jest and React testing library would be great for our unit tests, and integration tests would be done with Jest and Cypress. We also already had performance testing and real user monitoring tools in place, namely Lighthouse, Web Page Test, and Impulse. We felt that these were already working great and were less integral to the test automation of our CI/CD pipeline. That just left us with having to pick the best tools for us to cover our cross-browser, functional, and visual testing requirements. To our surprise, there were a ton of really great tools available, all with their own advantages and disadvantages. We checked out Cypress, Selenium, and Puppeteer for functional testing, along with Applitools, SauceLab Screener, and Percy for visual testing.
Going into our search, we knew what we had to keep in mind. The tools we chose had to be fast. We wanted to massively increase our functional and end-to-end testing coverage and shift our tests left to run on our pull requests before merging to master, in addition to running them after deployment. They also had to provide cross-browser coverage to support our customers running all mainstream browsers, devices, and operating systems. This included Internet Explorer, Firefox, Safari, Chrome, iOS and Android devices, and more. Finally, they had to be both developer and QA friendly. While we already have an amazing and dedicated QA team, we wanted to begin to foster a culture of collaboration and teamwork between dev and QA when it came to testing, which had previously felt quite siloed. We knew that this would be an all-hands-on-deck effort, so the tools we picked would need to be easy for people with different technical backgrounds to pick up. Aside from these non-negotiable qualities, we also considered things like cost and customer support offerings. After tons of research, deep dives into documentation, and a handful of POCs, we had found the winners. So which are they? Cypress and Applitools.
So what were the reasons that we ended up picking these tools to help us achieve our CI/CD dreams? Well, we immediately loved Cypress because of its simplicity. While it certainly has a huge number of features and capabilities, we found that it was super easy to get started on them because of their amazing documentation. When we started working on a POC, we were able to take one of our team's existing Selenium smoke test suites and rewrite it using Cypress. We were able to do so really quickly, and we were immediately impressed because it brought the execution time from several minutes with Selenium to under 60 seconds with Cypress. Another benefit of Cypress that was a fundamental shift in the way that we test our app is that it lives right in our project directory. Not only is this part of the architecture that allows Cypress to run really fast and flake-free, but it allows us to use it as a tool for test-driven development, making changes to our local source code and testing it immediately with Cypress before we create a pull request. We also found that having the test code directly in our project also made it possible for us to collaborate quickly when a test isn't passing. In the case of a failing test, we can now work as one team in the same repo, determine if a failing test needs to be updated, or if it's the code that needs fixing, or both. And we can make the necessary changes in that one repo with just one pull request. Last but not least, Cypress is free and open source, which we can all agree is a great feature. It has an extremely active and engaged community that is eager to address issues and constantly improve the tool. Right off the bat, during our POC trial period, Applitools also felt like an awesome way to add visual tests to our app, and like it would be a very good fit with Cypress. There really wasn't very much of a learning curve at all, and it was really easy to integrate. We were quickly convinced that we'd be getting a lot of bang for our buck if we decided to go with it as our solution. We'd just need to add a few test files to cover our different UIs, and in so doing, we would be able to get a lot of confidence that UHM would look and work correctly for everyone, no matter where they were using it. One thing that we had to take into consideration is that Applitools is a paid product. In our eyes, the ultra-fast grid and the unlimited test runs that come with it, along with great customer support, made it more than worth it. The combo of a fast-evolving OSS project like Cypress and a paid enterprise-type product like Applitools give us the best of both worlds. And to give you an example of how much simpler it became to do visual validations in our UI, a lot of our tests went from looking like what's on the left side of your screen to looking like what's on the right side of the screen. As you can see, the test on the left has to be super explicit about what it is you want to validate. It'd be really difficult to prevent this kind of test from getting very bloated and hard to maintain over time if your UI grows in complexity. With Applitools, we found that there was a way to write and maintain way less code, but at the same time increase our coverage, since we don't have to make an assertion for every element that we want to check. This meant a few things that were huge wins for us. We ended up getting a lot of our functional coverage for free, since we can write visual tests once and not really have to make changes to them as our UI evolves and changes over time. That same test will still work whenever there's a change in our code that affects how UHM looks. And we just have to update our baselines. This also meant that, since no coding skills are required in order to run and see the test results, we could very easily get our UX colleagues involved in the validation process and save them a lot of time too. One of the most validating moments throughout this whole process was one particular meeting that Joe and I had with two of our QA engineers a few weeks ago. We wanted to show them what could be done with the combined power of Cypress and Applitools. So we started off by going through one of our UIs together and deciding which screens needed visual coverage. Once we came up with the total number of screens that we needed to test visually, we created a new Cypress spec file, live coded it with them, and we had a full working visual testing suite for that particular UHM experience completed within the hour.
So now that we had chosen our tools, tested them out, gotten the support of our teammates and peers, it was time to put them to work in our pipeline to accomplish what had been our goal from the beginning. A CI/CD pipeline with a testing infrastructure so reliable that we could deploy new features straight to production. Our plan focuses on three main concepts. First, we want to shift left the bulk of our testing to run on pull requests. Second, we want to smoke test the key functionalities of our app automatically after they deploy to a live environment. Finally, we want to run all the tests we can after we deploy to production to catch any bugs that slip through the cracks and immediately notify the appropriate people. In the diagram on the right, you can see a boiled down version of our build and deploy pipeline with these main principles highlighted in blue. In the first stage, a developer writes some code and creates a pull request. This triggers a CI build that is tested to the max with unit, functional, and visual tests. It's here that we want to catch all possible bugs so that they don't make their way into our master branch, or even worse, onto staging or production. Here we use Cypress's amazing network stubbing capabilities to mock data for most API calls to increase the speed and consistency of our tests. If a PR passes all the tests, the developer can go ahead and merge it into master, which will create a new version 1.2.3 in this example, and begin a chain reaction of deployments starting from our dev tier. After a deploy to any environment, dev, int, staging, or production, we run a set of functional and visual smoke tests with Cypress and Applitools to ensure that the deployment was successful and the core features of the app are working. If everything goes according to plan, version 1.2.3 will be tested and deployed to production just a few short hours after hitting merge on GitHub. So, this is the goal we are working towards, but it definitely doesn't happen overnight. We've taken a step-by-step approach to implementing this and have already seen great results. This is what our current implementation looks like. We've enforced unit and functional test suites running on pull request. This means that if a single Jest or Cypress test fails, the pull request can't be merged. Ideally, we would like to have Applitools tests here, like we showed previously, but when implementing them, we ran into a technical hurdle using Applitools GitHub plugin for baseline branching and merging. Because of our GitHub enterprise security standards, we're having to work on a way to handle visual baseline branching via a GitHub app solution, which is currently in progress. In the meantime, we just have one master baseline per test, which has actually turned out to be a good way to introduce the tool to the team with limited complexity while still alerting us of visual differences before deploying to production. We've configured our pipeline to automatically deploy and test changes all the way up to staging whenever there's a merge to master, running visual tests after deploys, and alerting us via Slack and email of any visual differences. While we're holding off on automated production deploys, we're constantly writing more functional and visual tests and integrating them into our pipeline. Once we've gained enough experience and confidence in the system, it's as easy as flipping a switch to go full CI/CD. In summary, we've addressed our unit testing coverage issues with Jest and React testing library, enforcing a 90% coverage minimum. We've added Cypress and Applitools for functional and visual tests in our CI/CD process. To date, we have over 40 visual tests watching and alerting us of any changes after deployments. We've implemented our ideal pipeline design to deploy new changes to all our dev, int, and staging environments automatically, holding off on production for now. This, of course, only happens when all pull requests and smoke tests are passing. Finally, we made sure that the changes we made to our own application would be easily reusable by other teams in our organization. If a team wants to start running Cypress or Applitools in their build process, they can simply set some environment variables and their test suites will run automatically.
So what's left for us to do now? Well, although we've come a long way since we started this project, before we're able to deploy without manual testing, we need to increase our visual and functional testing to get us to full coverage of our app. We also want to go through a few development cycles so that in the future, when we switch to a fully automated deployment process in production, everyone involved can feel really confident. We also need to make as sure as possible that we have the right processes in place for the eventualities that could come up. And we also want to assure that everyone involved knows what parts of the process they're responsible for and what that ownership entails and looks like. Another change that's coming is that, as a development team, we all have to change our definition of done to always include writing functional and visual tests whenever they're necessary. Once we get to full coverage, we definitely want to make sure that we stay there. Once we have those final pieces in place, all that'll be left to do is make the switch to automated deployments. And with that, we'd like to say thank you very much for listening to our talk. We hope it's been interesting and informative, and that you took something away from it. It's been a pleasure, and please get in touch if you want to share any ideas.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much. Bye.
Hey, thank you so
Hey,
much
guys.
for that, guys. That was awesome.
Hey, what's up, Kelsey?
Thank you.
Hey, and it's always fun seeing a duo talk too. And so, are you both on the same team, or are you on like sibling teams that use the same code base?
No, we're on the
We're
same
on the same
team.
team.
Yeah.
Nice. Oh well, then that makes it even more fun. You get to work on talks together and code together.
Yeah, exactly. It's been a really good project to work on.
And so we have a bunch of questions from the audience, and everybody, if you want to ask questions, make sure you go to the Q&A widget. But the first one is, could you explain the criteria and the process that you used for your proof of concept when you were evaluating your test tools?
Definitely. Yeah, we looked at most of all ease of use for the developers. We knew that this was going to be like a new process for us to write functional and visual tests, and so we wanted it to be kind of easy for us, and also easy for the QA engineers. So we were looking for something that had like a shallow learning curve. We looked at cost, and then also I would say speed. Speed of the test was huge because we want to test a lot more, and we are testing a lot more, and it's taking less time than our current Selenium tests.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I did like how you noted that in your talk, how because there wasn't as much of a learning curve, that meant that you could dive right into what you were writing.
Yeah, we got our test suites running like it seemed like a matter of hours. We had like full like visual smoke tests running with Cypress and Applitools.
Dang.
And we did it in a couple meetings like over Zoom with our QA engineers, like live coded it, and just like Cypress clicked through, eyes check window. It was easy.
Dang, a few hours. I was expecting you to say, yeah, it was only a couple of weeks. A few hours is mind-blowing.
Yeah, the pipeline work definitely was way more time, but the tests are breeze to write.
Yeah. What were you going to say?
Yeah, setting up and getting going was super easy. It was really remarkable. And that was kind of one of the reasons that we went with the tools that we did.
That's awesome. Brianna in the chat was saying, this sounds exactly like what we're in progress of building with our CI/CD pipeline. So they're excited to see what other teams are trying this.
Sweet. That's awesome.
Let's see. Yeah. So here's another one. How do you decide which tests are run on PRs and which ones are run as smoke and regression tests?
You want to take this one, Hector?
Sure. So what's being run in a PR test, at the PR stage, is basically giving us enough confidence that that the code that we're pushing to our trunk is pretty well tested. It's working as expected. That's part of the effort that we've been doing is getting our unit tests up to par and making sure that there's no implementation details at all going on in there. So that's, and then also we're running all of our visual tests in the PR stage, obviously, so that that's also kind of taken care of. So we're trying to make like some of the quicker tests run in every PR stage, and then later on we can do more thorough testing with end-to-end tests and regression tests as well.
I would add too that like we want to run all of our Applitools visual tests on pull request. It does take a little longer. I think our 40 tests, it's really not that long. Our 40 tests take like 6-7 minutes. But we're getting so much coverage and we're shifting so much of our test coverage left that we want to spend that time on the pull requests, doing it there. And then like after tier deploys on smoke tests, like it's just core functionality. And then after a production deploy or like on a nightly regression, like our theory is just like test away, write as many Cypress tests as you want. They're free. Like be redundant if you need to. Like it's don't waste time, but you can like really get down to the nitty gritty just because they're free and it's not going to slow down the deployment.
That makes sense. And so in your process there, you started with the PR and then went through all the different stages. In your environment, what is the difference between dev and staging? Because they're probably somewhat similar to like what you might interact with, but are your tests actually different, or is it mostly other setup things or environment things that are different?
It's just environment things. In the past, when things weren't kind of deployed automatically, like kind of daisy chained together from a merge to an automatic dev or staging deploy, the tiers were a little more different. Like staging was a lot more stable, and we could use dev for, like more buggy features, things that were not done yet. But now, since we've shifted a lot of our testing left, we're kind of not allowing anything that's like not ready for staging into master at all. So they're pretty identical. It's really some environment variables and like different mock data at this point.
Do you think you'll ever get rid of one of them because you're moving more to that future, or do you think there's still a power in having the two separate ones?
We brought this up because they do, like, if all goes well, they're all the same, and it's almost like it just takes 3 times as long to get to staging because we're just deploying to dev and int and running the same smoke tests. Right. I think we have some corporate standard that was set up a while ago that said you need to have 4. We actually have 4 tiers. We have dev, int, staging, and production. So maybe that'll change now that we have new tools.
That would be fun. I love seeing those kinds of old school rules because they're useful, but with the way that development is going, it's not as necessary anymore because the tools that we've been using and the frameworks that we're using and stuff are more and more modular and not as impacted from tier to tier.
Yeah. I would say too that like during our, like we want to have things flowing straight to production, but there's times like when we need to stop and we don't, and we still need to have those like little tiers that are available to us to keep developing and test things that aren't ready for production. So we can change our pipeline. We actually have it configured where we could just deploy straight to staging and not do the dev and int. So we actually just go merge to master straight to staging to save time. And then if we ever needed to lock staging for we're working on hotfix or something like that, then we can keep developing on dev and use those tiers. So they have uses, but you're right, in the pipeline where it goes like dev, int, staging, production, it's kind of redundant.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Have you ever tried feature flags, like being able to flag on certain features in staging or anything?
Yeah, we totally have. We have we're working with actually Launch Darkly in order to do that. So that's one way that we're able to kind of test out certain features or just variations of the app in in a smaller segment of users.
Yeah, we're trying to use them more. They're great for things where we have like, we have support all over the world, but sometimes we don't have, chat agents anywhere but the US. So we'll feature flag, the chat feature or stuff like that. And different regions, different tiers, we use them for A/B testing and experiments too. We love Launch Darkly.
Yeah, it's neat. We do that a lot for dog fooding features too, where we can write all of our tests and do all of our things and only employees have access to it. And then like certain users and then slowly phase things out as well.
Yeah.
Neat. Okay, we have more questions. I could talk about this stuff all day. And so this question was, why aren't unit and functional tests done right after a merge to master? It seems like merging could be a potential source of bugs.
It could be if your branch wasn't up to date and all your tests hadn't run. So I think what you have to be disciplined about is making sure that your tests complete. And sometimes where this gets annoying is like you wrote your feature, your PR/CI pipeline is running, all the tests are about to pass, and then someone merges to master, and you have to update your branch and run all the tests again. And it's annoying, but you got to do it. Otherwise, the whole system doesn't work.
Yeah, that makes sense. Let's see. Okay, so what are some unexpected challenges that you faced when you were implementing your testing plan?
That's a really good question, actually. I think the biggest challenge that we've faced so far is that so our app is actually rendered in an iframe in pretty much, in the vast majority of domains that we've deployed to, and so then it's an iframe, and the host websites then have like a contract, right? And they send down certain props that we need, and we do post messages between the iframe and the parent page. So we've been having some issues running true end-to-end tests with the Cypress test runner, but that should be resolved soon too.
I've seen some cool blog posts about iframes. Haven't been able to make it work yet with our setup, but we are working on that to have more end-to-end tests. And also we've kind of realized that like our React app, we have internal testing links where it just pops up by itself. It's not in an iframe. And, it's a good thought exercise on, like, who needs to test what? Like, should our consuming websites be testing if we're showing up, or is that our job? So it's an important thing to think about, so that, I don't know, you just have your tests separated properly.
Yeah, I could see the iframe approach being like a blessing and a curse, where sometimes you might just want to inject something to make sure it's working, but then at the same time, you do have that modularity and everything separate where you can handle it that way.
Yeah, totally.
So if you don't mind my asking, how long has this whole process been so far? Like, how long was it from you saying we need these tests, we need to find all these tools, all the way to where you are today?
That's a good question. I think we started our first POCs maybe around a little while ago. I think it was like maybe September of last year. And then we did a ton of research on first. Yeah, right. Yeah, we did a few of them, and then kind of settled in maybe around like December, I think, and then January is when I'd say this whole initiative really took off.
That's faster than I expected, actually. That's not too bad to implement to where you are now, because what was it? You had 90% coverage or something?
We're getting there.
Getting there. Slowly but surely.
Yeah, that's unit test coverage.
Oh, unit test coverage. That's what it was.
Yeah. Right.
How long do you think it'll be until you get to that increased coverage, confidence gained, your definition of done?
I hope I like, with an aggressive goal, I think it's like sometime this year, like by the end of the year would be great. I think what we definitely want to do is like increase our deployment. So we have a 3-week sprint cycle. Next thing, we'd like to deploy twice in a sprint. And then maybe like we'll do an automated, like every Friday deployment. Regardless, just like we just have so much confidence in our testing suite that we know everything's fine. Just deploy and test.
Yeah, I'm pretty bullish.
But eventually we'd like to do that feature.
Yeah.
You're bullish on the goal? Go ahead, Hector.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think, Joe's right. I think, like, in an ideal world, end of the year at the latest, but, hopefully maybe by early fall. I'm not sure.
Yeah. So this is one, and I think this is an internal testing question. How do you ensure the test coverage stays high as new features are added over time?
I think that one's kind of it's really speaking to like the sorry.
Oh, you're good.
I'll pick it up for you.
Technical difficulties there. Yeah, I think that was really kind of on us, right? Like, I think the developers, like all of our developers, like we need to be really diligent about just maintaining the discipline of any time that you have a story, you have a ticket, that's got to be part of your that's got to be part of it, right? Like the acceptance criteria has to include unit testing, potentially visual testing, stuff like that. So yeah, it's just I think it's mostly a question of discipline for that one. And the good thing is, like, all of our teammates are pretty psyched about this. So we're not working alone here.
That was one thing in our process too that I found surprising, was that we have a dedicated QA team and they have the Selenium test written in Java. And I thought it was going to be kind of a harder sell to say, like, let's rewrite everything, let's use different tools. And then after, like, it was just such enthusiasm. They really loved the tool, started taking courses on it, wrote entire suites. All of a sudden that we just merged in, super easy. Now they run on our pull requests and smoke tests. It's been a smoother road than I thought, changing tools like that.
That is a blessing and very rare. They're just like, yeah, let's go for it. That's awesome. That is so cool. Okay, we have more. Do you support multiple languages in your app? And if so, how do you test them? Yeah?
Yeah, we support a ton. I think we have just under 40 combinations of country and languages. we're not testing all of them explicitly because that would be really time consuming and would kind of rack up quite a lot of cost to do it with visual testing. So the way that we're doing that is that there's actually you can take a series, a fairly limited number of like screens that UHM renders, right? And you can think of them as sort of paradigmatic. So you have a ton of different branches that that a given user could kind of wind down, but they all have similarities. So that's actually one of the ways that we'll be using the layout algorithm of Applitools to get pretty confident coverage on them.
Do you do any right to left languages with some of those testing? Because that's a whole other spectrum of making sure that everything is lined up. And I could see the visual part of Applitools being very necessary for those ones.
Yeah, actually we don't. So that's maybe an issue that we might have to kind of contend with in the future. But as of now, they're all left to right.
Yeah, that's a feature I heard about for the first time today, but I'm interested to see like how we can use that. And maybe that's just one of those special cases where we need to have like a visual baseline that is laid out left to right, And so just like make sure that we allocate our page count correctly for important things like that.
Yeah. Another question was, could you go into a bit more detail about the issues of running Applitools on pull requests? Because I remember you said we want to do this, but not quite yet.
Yeah, that was kind of unexpected because I was reading the Applitools docs, and there's a great GitHub plugin where if you just set it up, like boom, automatically, when you do a pull request, it lets Applitools know and it branches your visual baseline. And then when you merge your code on GitHub, if the tests pass, it merges the visual baselines too, like how GitHub merges your code. But our GitHub enterprise security standards don't allow for any of that. So we don't, and no inbound traffic from anywhere. So Applitools came up with this solution that's pretty cool. It's got a few moving parts, but it's got a proxy server that we own. And it just pulls the eyes server for test statuses and results. And then there's a GitHub app that's tied to on our GitHub. And then that GitHub app also pushes like pull request information to the eyes server. Like on a new pull request, it gives it like the branch name so it can manage the branching. And then we use the proxy server to update the test result status on our pull request. So we can see, or we will be able to see on our pull request, like, are the tests running? Did they pass or fail? If they failed, there's a link right there in GitHub to go, go to the dashboard. And then if it was an expected change, you can approve it, and then you can merge your pull request. So we're working on that, and Applitools has been really great. And shout out to our support guy, Brandon. He's really helping us out with that.
Nice. And then for your other tests, could you speak about how you've organized your Cypress tests with your application code?
Yeah, sure. They're directly in there. So root directory, there's a source folder, and then next to it is a Cypress folder. And in that Cypress folder, we have spec files. It's pretty simple. I wish I could show you. It's just right there in our project directory, and that's how it's designed to work.
Nice. I think folks are wanting architectural diagrams. That might be worth a blog post later on.
Sure, yeah, reach out to us and we're happy to talk about it.
Yeah, that'd be great.
That would be awesome. Cool. We got another one. How did you manage your test data for your automation suite, comparing the production to your staging environment?
A couple of different ways. For dynamic content, a lot of the times we used the layout feature for Applitools once we got the visual testing in there. So it didn't matter if the staging data was different or than the production data. We really just want to make sure that like we're getting a list of, say, links. We just want to make sure that the links are laid out correctly. If it's dynamic content, we're not really going to explicitly check it. If we ran into anything else, or even before we had Applitools, we would use mock data for anything that we were running into. So we just get a JSON file, watch out for that API if it's like a suggestion API, and just return 200 and the exact same data every time. But I think the superior approach is to just use Applitools and use the dynamic content region.
That makes sense. Okay. I'm noting the time, so I want to make sure we want to get to all these questions. Okay, so for end-to-end tests for UHM, do they also include the web and native app that they're in, or is that a separate thing?
That's a separate thing. We are not really testing, the parent page of any of our apps.
Okay,
but we're getting, like a lot of our. Yeah, well, we're trying to get a lot of our sister teams. Like a lot of them are the teams that host UHM. We're trying to get them to kind of adopt the same tools, and we're seeing a lot of enthusiasm for them. So it's been a really good process in that regard too.
Joseph, did you want to add something? Otherwise, I'll move on to the next one.
Oh, no.
Okay, great. Just wanted to check. Okay, many people have asked this. What CI providers do you use?
We're using Jenkins. Yeah, Jenkins. That's the provider that's been around ever since I started. Not sure if all the teams at Autodesk use them, but a ton of them do. And that was never really like a point of contention or something that we considered shifting. It's been working really well for us, and really easy to integrate both of these tools with it. So we're sticking with it.
Nice. I mean, it gets the job done. So why break something when it's not broken? All right. Well, we are getting out of time. I want to thank you both so much for your talk today and for answering all of these questions. Thank you so much.
It's been a pleasure.